Hey there, welcome back to the Return to Base podcast. As always, I am your host, Cliff Van Rickley, former Green Beret and retired U.S. Army Master Sergeant. This week's guest is William Branum. He is a former U.S. Navy SEAL who did 26 years of service to this country. He's also the founder and CEO of N.A.K.E.D Warrior Recovery, a CBD company focused on the recovery of veterans and first responders. So without further ado, let's do this.
Bravo Zulu, this is Victor Lima. We are RTB. This is Return to Base, a VeteranLife podcast.
William, what's going on, man? Aloha.
Just happy to be here. Yeah, exactly. Aloha.
How is it in the Aloha state? I heard you guys just got like snowed in or something.
They
made a big deal about it on the mainland.
We had some pretty serious storms roll through here, and I did get a bunch of messages from people, and they were like, "Can this be real? Snow, blizzards?" Like, well, yeah, it is on the Big Island where there is a giant mountain out there, and you can, and I haven't done it yet, but you can ski in the morning and surf in the afternoon or vice versa. But I could also do that in San Diego when I lived out there. So
yeah. Oh, but in San Diego, the difference is you could like go over the mountain into the desert afterwards. Used to do that when I was growing up in San Diego. Weirdest fucking place, right? It's kind of like a not quite. It is California, but it's not quite all California in San Diego. And then the ability to swim in the ocean, go up to the mountains, fuck off, and then go down to the desert and run around on four-wheelers and stuff is pretty cool. But it ain't no Hawaii, man.
It is not Hawaii.
I've only been once, and it was fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, there are pros and cons to living out here, for sure. You're on a rock in the middle of the ocean. I mean, technically, Hawaii is the furthest piece of land from any other land in the world.
Really?
Like, it's the most secluded place in the world. And you wouldn't know it by coming here. Yeah,
right. How long have you been in Hawaii?
About 8.5 years.
Okay. Are you an avid surfer?
I do surf. Since we moved from kind of the middle of the island to a different part of the island, which would, better school districts, better neighborhoods, things like that, about a year and a half ago. And it's much harder. So in the surf on Hawaii, in the winter, the North Shore is where it's awesome. And in the summer, the South Shore. I used to live about 15 minutes from the North Shore. So I could just get up in the morning, roll out of bed and head down and be in the water in like 20 minutes. Now it takes me an hour to get to the North Shore, no matter which direction I go. So it's a great place to live. I can see the ocean from my house. There's not good surf in that part of the ocean. So, I surf. I don't surf quite as much as I used to, just because it's a little more of a pain. Yeah.
Are you in with the locals, man, or do you still get bullied?
You know what? I surf on a stand-up paddleboard on a pretty small one.
Right.
Oftentimes the board I'm standing on is smaller than like the longboard that's next to me, and so as long as I can stand on that and not be a total kook in the water, I get enough respect. I respect, like, it's just like, as long as you're cool with the surfing etiquette, no one's really going to mess with you.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, for those, obviously we're not going to post video of this, but I have video currently. William's not a small man. Muscle. If you got a bit of muscle, they don't mess with you, I guess, but if you're a skinny looking Howley from Idaho trying to surf for the first time on the big waves, then it's
they're going to ask you to leave. And really that's oftentimes for your own safety.
Yeah. I actually have a friend of mine who actually my cousin in law was in Hawaii. And I don't know, he thought he had the right of way. Maybe he didn't for a non-local anyways. By the time he got to the beach, I mean, they surrounded him and stuff. And this was a long time ago, though. Maybe things have changed. Maybe people have chilled out a bit. Anyways,
it depends. I think it depends where you go. Depends where you go. Were you an ass in the water?
So 8.5 years on the island, and the last year and a half, 2 years has been affected by COVID. Is there some like blessing in disguise there, as in not as many people are trying to come visit you? Or
Well, yeah, it was fantastic unless you went to Home Depot. Like, so
Right.
living on the island of Oahu is kind of like living in LA, but on a rock. And because there's just so much traffic, so many people. And then, during the lockdowns, there were no people on the road. I was like, this is awesome. This is great.
Right.
I love this.
Yeah.
But then I was, we were remodeling this house, and that, going to the hardware store, that's where half the island was. So I remember going in one day and I was like, nope. Like the lines were like around, through the aisles. I'm like, well, this is not on the docket for today. I'm not standing in line for 3.5 hours with a bunch of other people. So
yeah. I don't like standing in line for 10 minutes.
Ever.
So,
No.
and Jesus Christ, how many Home Depots can there be on Oahu? I'm sure there's plenty, but
there's three, at least three, and at 2 or 3 Lowe's. Okay. And then there's some other smaller, like, Hardware Hawaii, and some other like smaller, like Ace Hardware type, stores on the island. So there's plenty of hardware stores.
Yeah. I imagine things are pretty expensive though.
Yeah.
Yeah. A sheet of
pros and cons to living.
Yeah, exactly. In paradise, right? So, last year, sheet plywood was in the mainland incredibly expensive. I had a couple sheets like laying out in my yard, and somebody offered to buy them for me. And I think I was making like a skateboard ramp with them for my kids. And I was like, I considered it. I was like, maybe. So living on Hawaii for 8.5 years in paradise. Before that, obviously you were a United States Navy SEAL and did 26 years in the Navy. How many of those years on the teams?
23 to 26. I would have gotten on the teams faster, but I made some tactical errors in my getting, joining the Navy and things like that. I made some tactical errors that landed me on a ship for 2 years. In the fleet. In Yokosuka, Japan. Yeah, it was not an awesome experience, but it was experience. So I wouldn't trade it. Yeah. But
All right. So 23 years on the SEAL teams, 26 years in the Navy. Thank you for your service, obviously. What years did those encompass? Like what year did you come in and what year did you get out?
I joined the Navy in 1992, directly out of high school. I mean, really, I joined the Navy as part of the delayed entry program. The summer before my senior year. And then I graduated from high school and went, 4 weeks later, went directly into the Navy. Okay,
cool. And then fucked off on the fleet for a bit. That had to have been great. I bet that was a great time.
It was my fault. I mean, I got to see a lot of the world. I got to see stuff that other people don't get to see. But kind of what happened is I joined the Navy to be a SEAL. Right. And I took the screening test in boot camp and I failed it.
Oh.
And then I went from boot camp in the Navy. You have to have a Navy job in order to advance. Now you can go in and become a SEAL, and that's your Navy job. But when I joined, we didn't have like the SEAL MOS, if you will. Right. And so what we had, I went to the school to become a gunner's mate, which that sounds cool. That is not cool. It really, what a gunner's mate is you work on the big gun system or missile launchers on that big gray thing that floats out in the water. So
that seems really fucking cool, man.
It's all about pneumatics, electronics, and hydraulics. And there was 1 week out of 6 months that we covered small arms. Yeah, and we didn't even cover that much. And so when we came time to pick orders after before we graduated, there was about four weeks left in the course. I was high enough in the class. I could have gone to take the SEAL screening test again, but it was the winter in, north of Chicago. Yeah. And I was lazy. I didn't really feel like getting up at like 4 a.m. to go over, take the screening test again and battling the cold and ice and all that other stuff. And so I took a set of orders to go to another school for 4 more months in Virginia Beach, at N.A.K.E.D. And I thought I would go to that school. I would get in better shape, and then I would go to Buds.
Right.
Well, what I didn't know is because I took that school for 4 more months, I owed the Navy 24 months of obligated service.
Oh,
and so I was like, right. So I'm like, 2 months in, I'm like, hey, I want to take the SEAL screening test. I want to go to Buds. And the instructor was like, okay. They looked into it and they came back and they're like, yeah, that's not going to happen because you took this school. I said, well, what if I fail out of the school? They said, you're still going to go to that same job in the Navy. Like it's tied to this school. So I didn't understand any of that. So I went to the fleet for 2 years. And then when it came time, so at the 9-month mark, you call your detailer and like start, negotiating for your next set of orders. And I was like, I called mine and I was like, hey, I'm going to put a package in to go to Buds because I want to be a Navy SEAL. And he's like, that's great ambition, but I'm not going to release you because your N.A.K.E.D, your MOS is too critical to the Navy. So I will not release you to go to SEAL training. I'm like, really? Because it's really hard and maybe I don't make it. Maybe then you get me back. He's like, no, and no. And so, I continue, I passed a screening test. Actually the next time I took it, I failed it. I failed the run by like 12 seconds or something silly like that. I took it with a bunch of other guys that were taking the test to become a diver or an EOD guy. And I beat them all on push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, the swim and the run.
Yeah.
And I was wearing boots. I was wearing boots and long pants. And because I was so far ahead of everyone else, I was like a little bit like arrogant, I guess. Yeah. I'm like, I got this. And I'm just like cruising at the end. And he says my time. And I'm like, what? That's not that, what? And so I was like a little bit, I'm like, but I beat everyone. It doesn't matter. Like these are the standards. You have to meet the standard. So the next time I took it, I left nothing out there. So I made sure I made sure that I pass it. And then, I submit my package. I do all the medical stuff. I get letters of recommendation. My detailer still says, no. The SEAL detailer says, your guy has to let you go. Right. And so the chief of naval operations comes to Yokosuka, Japan. And he came to my ship. He didn't go to any other ship in Japan. He only came to my ship, my little old dinky ship. And he had CNO's call and he, gave out his vision of the Navy or whatever. And I didn't really listen. I just waited for Q&A. And when he asked for questions, I raised my hand. I was like, oh yeah. And he called on me. And I said, yeah, I joined the Navy to become a SEAL. My detailer won't let me go because my NEC is too critical. I think I deserve a chance to go. And he's like, okay. So he turns to my commanding officer, who I told I was going to ask, thankfully. Right. And I turned to him and he's like, is he a good guy? And he said, yeah, he was a sailor of the quarter this quarter, which is like employee of the month. And so he turns back to me. He's like, check, you'll be in the first class after your PRD, and which is planned rotational date. And 6 weeks later, I'm off to California to go to SEAL training.
Nice. Explain to people real quick what is involved in the SEAL assessment test. Is that what you call it? SEAL assessment test?
Yeah, they've got some fancy word for it now.
Yeah,
but
like swim probably.
Yeah. So there's like when I think about it now and I think about like how low those numbers are, I'm like, really, how did I fail that? But really I wasn't in shape. My mind wasn't ready for that yet. But if I had prepared for it, I would have passed it in boot camp. But so it's like a 500-yard swim. I don't know the time. It's maybe like 12 minutes or something. Right. The numbers I'm going to give you are minimum numbers. And if you do the minimum, you're probably still not going to make it into the program. Mm-hmm. But so it's like 52 push-ups, 60 sit-ups. It was like maybe 6 pull-ups and then a 1.5 mile run in boots and long pants. Now, the goal is when you do the swim very fast, you do 100, 120 push-ups, the same for sit-ups. You try to knock out 20 pull-ups if you can and do the run in whatever, like that 12 minutes or whatever it is, less time than that. So when I hear it now, I'm like, really, that was it? That's not that hard because, when you show up, you take it again and people fail it. And so then before you start first phase, you take the new, well, they don't do it anymore, but the new screening test, the SEAL screening, the SEAL PRT, which is a 1/2 mile swim, push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, and then a 3 mile run. And it's all, just back to back and you're always trying to, get those numbers on push-ups and pull-ups of 120 for each of those, and like in the 20 to 25 range on pull-ups, and they're just strict hang pull-ups, none of this CrossFit kipping stuff that not allowed. But and then you had to pass that before you even started first phase. So it was, the standards are there, and then they increase the standards to make sure that you're at least physically fit enough to complete the training.
Yeah. That's no joke for sure. I mean, and like you said, when you look back, you're like, man, I could still pass those standards. Like even just getting out of bed after having COVID or something. Maybe not, I don't know. But it sounds like, to me, it sounds like those things happen for a reason. You found out some stuff at a really early age. Number one, don't give up on yourself.
Right.
Keep pushing. Number two is don't do the minimum. Don't, what do you call it? Like shit bag it or,
right.
Or sandbag it.
Sandbag it. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounded like you had confidence in space, but also you mentioned that the fateful decision really that you had was, I'm going to sleep in this one day, and was it worth it? Right.
Right. That's just being lazy. I mean, you have opportunity right there. Are you going to take the opportunity or let it go? Yeah.
That's part of growing up, I guess. Right. Myself, I didn't go to special forces selection until I was in the military for 8 years. And I had talked about going before, but I'd been deploying and stuff. And it was like, I'll go after this one, or, this war's never going to last this long. I'm going to get what I can and then go to selection. Right. So it was one of those things where in the end, I should have went a lot earlier.
Right. But living with that regret, at least you eventually did it.
Yeah, exactly. And I had a kind of an unusual experience myself. Is I was actually working with special forces. I was in a special forces unit, and I was deployed to OIF 3 times with that special forces unit before I actually went to the Q course. Right. And so I had a pretty good perspective of it all, but I don't know. I just felt like that's not my time. I didn't have much confidence at that time. I was like, man, I'm not doing the workouts or focusing as much as I need to. I needed time to mature myself. But, eventually I did. And, the rest is history. I guess it's not really like it's history. It's just, that's my history is I took too long to get in, but I had a pretty good career. So you, excuse me, you make it to the SEAL teams sometime around 1990, or at least at Buds around 1995 ish.
Yep.
Yeah. What were some of the things you learned in Buds and the SEAL training pipeline? What's it called? It's not just Buds, right? Buds is the whole thing.
Buds is just the selection process. Okay. And then after Buds, now it's different. When I went through, you graduated Buds, then you went to Army Airborne School and learned how to fall down for 3 weeks.
Fort Benning, the Army has to teach you how to do things.
You have to learn how to fall down for 3 weeks before they let you jump out of the airplane. And then you go to the team, and then you show up at the team, and you still don't have a trident on your chest. You're not a SEAL. You're not a SEAL.
Is that still currently?
It's not anymore. No.
Okay.
Now there's a new pipeline, but back then you went to SEAL tactical training, and it was run by, you basically show up and they teach you all of the, guys from all the different teams. Well, they do it out at because I was an East Coast SEAL for most of my career. Okay. They do it. Buds is out in San Clemente. So the third phase of Buds is out there. Yep. But on the West Coast, they would do it out at an island. Okay. And for like land warfare and stuff like that. On the East Coast, we did it at Fort, not Pickett, Fort AP Hill, Virginia. Yep. And so, but we also went down to Puerto Rico and did 3 weeks of combat swimmer diving. And then we went to Fort AP Hill. And so that was about a 4-month course. Then you show back up at the team. They put you in a platoon, and then you're on probation for a year. Still don't have a trident on your chest.
Yeah.
You still are not awarded. And then when the team decides that they want to do a Trident board, then they would bring you in and you would have to do all these, they would test you on your knowledge of being a SEAL, whether it was, everything from demo to jumping out of airplanes to, points of performance, to putting guns together, to loading crypto, to, programming radios. It didn't matter what you did in the platoon, how to maybe they would make you while saying, points of performance, put together this pile of, guns on the, that was in a bucket and just spread out on the table and looking for safety and just seeing if you're going to screw up or not. And if you actually knew what you were saying, or you're just trying to, blow smoke in their face, pull the wool over their eyes. You can't fake not knowing something. So, and then if you passed, then you were awarded your Trident, and then you deployed. If you failed, you had one more opportunity to take the board. And then, if you failed, then you were gone. You went back, you went to the fleet. You were kicked out. Yeah. And so the program now is you graduate from BUDS and then you go directly into the pipeline of you get 1 week of static line, and then you get 3 weeks of free fall, military free fall, from a civilian drop zone in San Diego. Then you go up to Kodiak, Alaska. You learn, some navigation, some survival, some over the beach stuff, and then you go out to the desert and you learn land warfare. You learn some CQC, and then you show up. Then you get your Trident. Then you show up to the team, and you're just a new guy, and you're a new guy with your Trident on. But the platoons that I ran, even though the guys were new guys, right? They were treated as, and most of the older guys in the platoons that I ran, they were old school SEALs. They, went through STT and, they had to earn their Trident. And so we had these, Trident boards for guys, even though they already had their Trident, you still got to, prove it at the end. And it was some interesting challenges. And I did have one guy that failed the board, and he had some other stuff. And this was right before a deployment, and every one of the older guys were like, we do not trust him. We do not want to deploy with him. But I didn't do the paperwork that was required to, get rid of someone. And so that was a lesson that I learned. But by the end of deployment, he had re-earned the respect of the platoon, and they gave him another board. And so we started for that deployment in 2005. We were in Iraq, but the last 6 weeks we rotated a different, our sister platoon in, and we went to Germany and spent the last 6 weeks of that deployment in Germany, going to Poland. We did a professional development trip out to Normandy, and I had all the new guys sort of run that, plan it, get there. You're our tour guide, and got to see, some old school UDT history. Out there, and just, it was a super cool event. Let's see, Poland, Germany, Normandy. I feel like we did one other thing in that 6 weeks, but on that, when we were back in Germany, that's when the guys, did the Trident board again, and he passed. He earned the respect of the team, and so he didn't get kicked out.
That's pretty cool. I mean, there's a little bit of tradition there. And I think this brings up a good point with the time period in which you served in the SEAL teams, right? So you have pre 9/11 and post 9/11, and in special forces, things are pretty similar, where there'd be times where you're like, man, I do not want this dude on my team, but if I lose one dude, I am not going to be able to do anything. And unfortunately, you become a victim of your success in a way where you're like, dude, we have to go. We have to be mission capable, and we'll just train them along as best we can. And sometimes good results come out of that, right? And other times you're like, dude, wish I just left this dude back at Fort Campbell or whatever.
And that's part of leadership also. It's not everyone is going to be awesome. You're going to have these star performers, and you're going to have other people that are mediocre, but they have valuable skills. So you just have to that's the leadership challenge, is find what they're good at and then focus them in on that. And then they just become the expert in it. And that helps them become successful in whatever. And it doesn't matter if it's in the military or if it's in, the corporate world. Yeah, for sure. So pre 9/11, excuse me, pre 9/11, being on the SEAL team had been, obviously a different
animal than after 9/11. Same for, obviously MARSOC didn't exist, number one.
Right.
And in special forces, a lot of training exercise, low intensity conflicts, things like that. Deployments with other armies, other special operations units. And I assume is a lot or very similar to what the SEALs are doing. Definitely deployments, but a different mindset. And talk about kind of your pre 9/11, what it was like to be a Navy SEAL at that time. I know that from talking to people and from some of the books I've read, it's kind of like, yeah, we're SEALs, but everybody was kind of itching like, man, not saying we want something bad to happen, but also you want the chance to prove your mettle.
Yeah, 100%. And so pre 9/11, we did a lot of JSETs. We did a lot of training coalition forces, like exchanging of TTPs. I know SEAL Team 2, they were big into winter warfare and the European theater, where they would train with the Norwegians. And that was like one of the big trips is going up there to Norway and doing these like really hardcore winter warfare trips. SEAL Team 8 they also had to, do ride on ships. So they may have a 6-month deployment where they're on a ship almost the entire time.
What?
Doing nothing. Maybe they could like work out some. Yeah, you work out, you eat like SEAL, sleep, lift, eat, and repeat. And so that was kind of a lot of the pre 9/11 deployments. Mm-hmm. I remember the first platoon I deployed with to Afghanistan in 2003. They were supposed to be one of those platoons, and I remember being. I went over to work in the JOC as the LNO, and then I eventually
Joint Operations Center for those following along.
Weaseled my way into going out. Like I convinced someone that he should, like for professional development, he should come in and he should fill this role that I'm filling, and I will go out and work with the task unit. And so that was a great learning experience. I got to see like other leaders lead like good and bad, and there was also some guys in that platoon where they were like complaining that they should be doing these other jobs and be doing more hardcore stuff. And I was like, bro, you should be grateful that you're not on a ship right now.
Yeah.
Like, because that's where you were supposed to go. Yeah. Like be happy where you are, because like every deployment before this one was a non-combat deployment. Yeah. And so, we would do oftentimes we would call them, kind of European vacations, because we would just go to like, France and Italy and Greece, Germany, Spain, and would train with all of their special forces, and then come back to, we were deployed to Rota, Spain. So that was not terrible. Not terrible. Living in the barracks. And so we did things to keep our skill sets high, and then we'd come back from deployment. And then, go through a workup, which I think a workup in the SEAL teams is very different from what you guys do on an ODA, because we have a very structured deployment or a workup where we have like 6 months of professional development where you just go to school. Then we have 6 months of unit level training where we focus on very advanced skill sets, building the team. Then we do 6 months of pre-deployment, like specialty training, more advanced stuff. So in 2005, we got tasked with the mission of PSD to protect the interim government of Iraq. So instead of doing more land warfare stuff or more CQC or assault stuff, we still did some of that, but we focused more on like protecting principals and VIPs, high speed driving, and then deploy. So we're very well trained and capable when we by the time we do deploy.
Yeah, and I gotta tell you, I always admired the SEALs training cycle, because I'm sure, as you know, right? Like back in the early days of the GWAT, during that 2 years that you just talked about, an ODA was deployed like 2.5 times. Right. It's like,
but there's value in that. Like you're getting, combat experience. You're getting out there, you're learning, you're working out TTPs, you're building relationships, you're doing all these other things. You just are doing it at a lower, and you're learning valuable lessons. Right. And you're keeping the team together for the most part, I think.
Yeah. as it is, it's a machine that kind of eats itself. You know, you got to feed the schoolhouse, and the schoolhouse is getting bigger. So it would be nice to have been able to keep teams together more often. But you said it right. So I know the teams kind of like selected their team. Chiefs would select their team every deployment, right? Kind of like a draft, right?
As best as they could. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas
one team's not going to get all the star players, though.
Yeah, exactly. On an ODA, you kind of show up as a team star, and if you're lucky to make E8 or be in the position, and you have what you got, and you can help get some of those guys out if you don't want them, or kind of usher them out to, hey, this would be good for your career because I really want this other dude.
Right, exactly.
Or man, you're like getting fat and lazy, time to go. But yeah, op tempo was crazy back in the day. It was just 6 months on, 6 months back in the box, and not enough time in between to really train or get better. But
it's a fine way to break a force, but yeah, it is a fine way to break a force. And you know, I remember the first SEALs I worked with, they weren't too keen on this. This is when basically we were directed to do partner-led. SEALs at that time were not very keen on doing partner-led or foreign internal defense type stuff. And whereas it's old hat for SF, that's kind of our bread and butter is the, you know, hey man, why would I take a bullet as a number one guy for this guy's country? Hey, Ahmed, come here, man. You're a number one guy. Right. Let's teach you how to do this. I have been. It's actually kind of funny. So every single mission I've ever been on has been not necessarily partner led, but definitely, you know, we try to put the locals, the indige out front. And there was only really a handful of times where, you know, I found myself at a doorway and felt the hand squeeze my shoulder, and then we were inside a building. We're like, oh shit, it's just me and Drew in this piece. Yep.
You know, you got to do what you got to do, you know, and keep the initiative and keep it fast. But yeah, it's like, oh man.
And you know, the way that we would roll is we would be handed the same, you know, marching orders, but we would do everything that we could do to carry as many soft dudes as we could with us. Right. Yep. And as few locals as we could.
Yeah.
And, you know, we wanted to roll, you know, big and hard.
Big, heavy.
And, you know, they were like, no, you can only take 4 Americans. Yeah, but we need these and this and this and the comms guy and the JTAC and a medic and a sniper and the QRF. And somehow we would like pull the QRF into the package somehow and reduce the number of locals as we went in, because we wanted we just wanted to go kick doors and find the enemy. And so, you know, I don't know if you've ever heard of Mike Day. So Mike was, he was at SEAL Team 4. We came in and we relieved SEAL Team 4. But on the very last mission, it was a transition mission. So some SEAL Team 10 guys and mostly SEAL Team 4 guys, just like kind of doing like a handoff. Yeah. And so there were, you know, Iraqis on the op and, you know, it was Mike and one other American SEAL, and they go in, and the room that Mike goes in, there's 3 dudes set up and they shoot the shit out of him. He's got shot, I don't know, like 27 times or something like that. Schwedler, who went right, he took a round in the back of the head. The Iraqis were supposed to like fuel in, and they didn't because they were like, oh, look. And I think, you know, they kind of like stuck their gun in and kind of sprayed, and potentially Mike got hit by 1 or 2 of those rounds. But, you know, everyone pulled off target. There was a guy outside that got hit. But that was, you know, we used that as like, hey, we like the Iraqis, it got hot and they backed out and they didn't want to do the mission. And so we lost a guy and all this other stuff. So we were able to use that a little bit as leverage. But, you know, that political climate while, you know, whoever's in charge gets to make the rules and like approving con ops and things like that.
Hey, as long as nothing happens, nobody even knows any different, right? but the times that, I mean, there are definitely questions that get answered and need to be, or questions that get asked and need to be answered when something does happen, unfortunately. But yeah, it's I talk to some people from time to time about the difference between the SEAL teams and ODAs. And, eventually late after 2008 time period, very, very similar type of operations. Hey, this is your partner force. SEALs had to go do village stability operations in Afghanistan, very much ODA type stuff. And I got to tell you, I was impressed by the SEALs' ability to adapt to that new mission set, started learning languages, which is something that, SF prides itself on. Mine was Farsi, by the way. And I've still haven't been to Iran. But I did get to use it in Afghanistan a little bit, kind of picked up Dari with the basis of, Farsi. But, did you ever get to learn a language or?
I suck at languages. I barely can get English out of my mouth. So I've tried, like when I lived in Japan, I tried to learn some Japanese and actually I learned more from my buddy's 2-year-old daughter than I did from the college course that I took because, she would just repeat stuff over and over. And I was like, okay, I know what that means. Okay. And I would learn through that repetition. But, when I would try to sit down and learn it, I'm an idiot.
I tell you what, that was the hardest part of the entire Special Forces pipeline Q course for me was language. I
would love to speak other languages. I just suck at it.
It's different. It's a lot of work. It was just so mentally taxing. I felt like I needed like 6 months vacation after my 4 or 5 months of language school. So as a SEAL on SEAL teams, obviously you probably deployed, 26 years, probably over 10 times deploying.
Yeah, so I have 10 deployments. 7 were combat and 3 were non-combat.
Yeah. You take those lessons, obviously, from your deployments, your positions of leadership, and you have to eventually make that decision to leave the military. Right.
Or the decision gets made for you.
Is that what happened with you?
Yeah. So after
26 years. Come on, man.
26 years. I mean, I was an E8. And so they're like, all right, your time is up. You got to get out of the way for the new blood to come in. I'm like, okay. And that was the hardest. I say that my transition from the military to civilian life is the hardest military mission I've ever been on. And I'm still on it. I'm still, figuring stuff out. Because, when you're in the military, you have a team, you have, a badass team with a badass mission and purpose. And you know what you're going to do every morning when you wake up and who's going to support you and not support you and what you're going to do. Like when I got out, I was like, I don't know what to do. Like I kind of had a plan and I was kind of executing the plan, but I was doing it poorly. And I can make excuses. Just like anyone else, it's hard to make these connections and build something on a rock in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. But I did like surfing. And so,
Yeah. So you were in Hawaii. So you were off of the line SEAL teams, at least. You're right. So I don't know about you.
My first SEAL team was a SEAL delivery vehicle team. Okay. And so it's a mini submarine. You get, a pilot and a navigator up front and then, up to 4 guys in the back.
Yeah.
And it's like, it is truly the most clandestine method of operating, period.
Yeah.
Doing, in leadership positions, oftentimes you have to do, support your own platoon, your own task unit. And, I would be on like the dive suit boat. We're following the SDV on these training missions. And if we operate in the day, we have this big orange buoy that the SDV tows. At night, you just have a light that shines up. Yeah. You follow that light through the water. It looks kind of alien-ish. It's kind of cool. Mm-hmm. But they leave the boat ramp and they go do a thing and no bubbles hit the surface, no nothing, like actions on the objective. No one even knows they're there. Like we only know they're there because we know what time they're going to hit the target and things like that. Or they like break a chem light and they put the package, above the water line. Mm-hmm. And so that we can retrieve it. And then they go back and get in the SDV and then, head back home. But that is the absolute most clandestine, method of operating, period. But, because of that team, and the reason that I came out here is they have a very strategic mission. Missions that team does get approved by the president of the United States because they're so strategically important.
Yeah.
And the risk of force is high. Like if there's mission failure on that team, it's very, very bad.
I think that, like you said, it's super clandestine, the most clandestine, and it's just fucking cool, dude. But I've read that it's not an assignment that most SEALs want out of.
No. It's
like, oh man,
I was devastated. That was I was assigned SDV Team 2 on the East Coast, and that team has gone away like before graduation from BUD/S, and I was just like I worked all this time to get on a SEAL team, and I'm going to go become a diver. I'm just not okay with that. But being at that team, and we work in a smaller group. I got opportunities. I went to sniper school super early. Out of my first platoon, I got to go to free fall school super early, before other guys generally would get to go. So I got opportunities because I was at that team that I probably wouldn't have gotten at another team, maybe. So it was, because I had that, that qualification early on in my career, when it came time to, go to, maybe come out here to Hawaii to where the team is, I already had that qual. So it was an easy transition. I didn't have to go to SDV school and learn how to drive the boat. I already kind of knew how to drive the boat. Not well, but good enough.
How do you pass a SDV driving course? You just got
you just do a lot of diving, and you do mission planning, and you learn how to use the stuff. And then it's kind of like flying an airplane. You're like on instruments.
It's just up, down, left, right.
Yep, right? Exactly.
Except, like you said, you can't surface any bubbles. It's crazy. I imagine that it's not a safe mode of transport. There's got to have a lot of risk in it.
There's certainly some risk. Getting
eaten by a shark.
Well, you're inside an enclosed.
It's enclosed. Okay.
Yeah, but it is wet, so you're on scuba the whole time.
Okay.
Of some sort. You're on scuba, you're on a closed circuit or a mixed, a semi-closed circuit, which it monitors like the partial pressure of oxygen, and how much nitrogen is in the system.
It's like a rebreather?
It is. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's one that you wear on your back, full face mask, so you can kind of talk and communicate underwater. But really the guys in the back of the boat where I always sat, you have no comms, your communication was whether you squeeze your buddy or not. And there's no room.
And you're just in there wet and cold.
You're in there. Like no kidding. Like you're packed in like sardines. Like sometimes you have to have someone close the door for you. Man. No way to communicate except through squeezing. And, 1 is okay. 2 is no. 3 is I can't clear, come up 5 feet or so. And 4, there's an emergency. And the way that you communicate from the guy in the back of the boat to the person in the front is there's a light. There's a little button right here. And that's how you communicate to the front of the boat. Like on an airplane, like calling the stewardess. Kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool,
you're like, so if someone can't clear and someone gives me the squeeze, 3 squeezes, I hit that light 3 times. And then they hit it back to make sure that they heard what I said. And then they'll come up, 5 feet. And then, the guy will give me the okay. So that he clears, and then I'll do the okay, and then I'll go back to the depth that they were traveling.
Just a whole list of emergency procedures, right?
Right. It's
Yeah. I myself,
so much more complicated than a regular land operation.
Yeah. I myself never had the desire to go in the water, underwater. I'm a free fall guy, and people ask, well, how come you go to scuba school? I'm like, dude, imagine going from the top of the food chain to the bottom of the food chain. So I looked at it. I'm like, dude, I do not want to go swimming around in dark and cold. And that's just me, man. That's one of the reasons, probably many reasons why I could never become a SEAL, just not into the water. Oddly enough, one of the first training missions I did after the Q course was at San Clemente Island. I spent 3 weeks or something out there, and we did we were doing support for a full mission profile from our dive team, and one of the Zodiacs completely burned into the Pacific Ocean. And I was like underneath it. I was on a Zodiac or something like that, or some type of boat in the middle of the ocean, and we're like, what was that sound? Oh, that sound was a Zodiac hitting the ocean at like terminal velocity.
Fast.
From like 1,250 feet or something like that. And then the whole ocean was covered in fuel. It was just a bad situation then, but it was good times. They never did. There's no way anybody will ever get to the contents of that Zodiac, because it's super fucking deep there, man.
And you know, San Clemente Island, that is the third largest breeding ground for great white sharks in the world.
Yeah.
And we did swims out there all the time. We did swim, so that was like the last 4 weeks of buds. Mm-hmm. And the first thing they do, you get to the island, you like unload everything, and they're like, okay, get in the classroom. Yeah. And they show you like a video of Shark Week, and they talk about, you know, sharks and all this other stuff. And now it's dark. And then they're like, okay, go get your swim stuff on and be on the beach in 5 minutes. And so you show up on the beach, you have your UDT life jacket on, and we're all thinking like, they're just kidding. We're not really doing this. They're just messing with us. No, you go do like a 1 mile ocean swim, and with your chem light on so they can see you. And I'm just like, that's the fastest swim that anyone does in all of SEAL training.
Yeah, I bet.
You're like, oh, you need to get out of here.
That place is freaking awesome though. What an awesome training ground. I mean, other than, you know, there's nothing to do except hang out the Salty Crab and go to the PX, right?
We didn't get any of that when I was out there. We lived in our barracks in our little compound,
funny story is my team said we were going to go use the Mark 19 at this range on the south part of the island, on the southwestern part of the island. There's a range where you're kind of up on the ridge, and you're supposed to have the rounds land kind of in this estuary area. It's like a small gulf. And the SEAL who was detailed out there, I don't know, is like range control or something. He said, a buddy of mine is staying the night there on a yacht, right in that cove. Okay. By the time you get there, they'll be gone. Right. So we show up, they're not gone. We're like, damn. And we don't have a lot of time. And we're up there, 500, 600 feet above this bay or cove. And then the other thing he said was, if they're still there, just like fire around into the, onto the beach or near the beach. I don't know if he was joking or not, but the decision was made. Let's wake these dudes up. So our weapons guy was like, all right, I'll put a couple rounds on this beach. And, from 500 feet, maybe the aim's a little bit different. Anyways, the first round hit the beach. Boom. The second round hit in the water a little bit. This guy, it wasn't super close. The guy wasn't super close, but I've never seen a boat of that size. It was like a yacht
moving out.
Like you saw people coming out of the hull halfway dressed, like pulling up everything they could, and taking off. And it was just like, oh man, that had to scare the shit out of them to wake up to.
100%.
Yeah. I've never been in a boat when there's been an explosion nearby, but I bet you it's not very, very fun.
Yeah.
But, excuse me. So we talked a little bit about kind of that moment in history that shaped all of our lives, I think, which was September 11th. And, I always tell people, everybody remembers where they were mostly. And so where were you and how did you feel about that? And how did you react?
I was at Camp Atterbury, Indiana.
Yeah,
I was teaching sniper school at the time, and I happened to be the senior instructor on the ground. So there were guys that were senior to me, like the OIC of the course, but he was out doing some other stuff in California. And so I was a senior guy. And then we're heading to the range, listening to the radio, and they start talking about, the Twin Towers and the attack, back in the 90s, and where someone like, Al-Qaeda essentially put a truck full of explosives at the base of the tower. I think it went low order. It made some damage, but not certainly didn't take the building down. That had been repaired. And that was maybe, 5-10 years before.
I think it was like 93, right?
Something like that. I don't really remember, but, and then, they started talking about planes flying into the tower.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on? So I said, all right, hey, we're going to not go to the range right now. Let's go check out what's going on the news. And then we're like watching planes fly in, and people are like, what do we do? And I'm like, hold on, let me make some phone calls. Because, even though I was the senior instructor, we had student instructors that were more senior to me. But I'm like, and they're asking me, and I'm like, really? You don't know? You can't help a brother out here. Yeah. And so I called back, and they're like, continue training. And then, eventually we started deploying over to Afghanistan.
Yeah. Continue training, because you're going to need that a little bit of extra training. And, the world changed quite immediately. I myself, I was in the Army in Germany, and pretty bizarre. Same story as kind of you start hearing things about the Twin Towers. I think I turned on television, and my first response was like, what type of idiot flies a plane into the World Trade Center? How do you how did that happen? What was this person doing accidentally? And it was only when I turned on the television, the first thing I saw was the second plane hitting the other tower, and it was like, oh, okay, stuff's real now. Yeah, stuff's real. I think my plan at that time was to do a few years in the Army and get out. So that changed dramatically. Did you have plans at that time to make it a career, or did that shape the rest of your decision-making process? I mean, I don't think I thought career, but I didn't have a plan to do anything else. Like, I was having fun. I was enjoying what I was doing, again, purpose and mission and all this other stuff. And that's what I wanted to be part of from my childhood. I always knew I wanted to be part of I wanted to be a commando. Yeah. And, but I didn't know what a SEAL was back then, because I had 4 channels, growing up, certainly no internet back then, no cell phones, no nothing. And, someone told me, I was in the Boy Scouts, and someone, he was like, hey, I want to be an F-14 pilot, and I want to be a Navy SEAL. I'm like, well, I know what an F-14 pilot is. That sounds pretty cool. But I don't know what a Navy SEAL is. He's like, they're commandos. They jump out of airplanes. They do all this cool stuff, and they scuba dive, and they're working as a small team, and they're, this elite special forces group. I'm like, that's what I want to do also. And so that's how I ended up in the Navy, because I did not want to join the Navy. Right. Most of my family had been in the Navy. There was a naval air station in Meridian, Mississippi. Okay. Yeah. So there was a naval air station there, and there were these, young kids right out of boot camp, walking through the mall, just acting like a bunch of idiots, looking like dorks. like we all do. Yeah. Going to their A school to learn how to do their Navy job. And, they're a bunch of idiots. I'm like, I will never be one of those guys. Well, I was one of those guys 100%. I tried not to be as big of an idiot, but certainly I was. Yeah. All of a sudden you got some money in your pocket. What else are you going to do? Go to the mall, man. Right. So September 11th, obviously, profound impact on everybody's decision. Mostly some people, so it made some people's careers. Like, I guess I'm going to see this through. I don't think any of us suspected at that time it would be 20 years, but it was. And so eventually you're, as you said, told to go home, pick up your stuff and get out of the Navy. And what was your transition like? So my last 3 years, I worked in the acquisition shop, and my job was the science and technology. It is a good job. I did it, like, I was force detailed to the headquarters. I did it there. And then, I was the guy who did the procurement and the R&D for all of the, like, body armor, cold weather clothing, combat uniforms, helmet, acquisition, and communications equipment. So I was the only active duty SEAL that
ran that piece of it from the headquarters side.
Right.
And so I had that experience for 3 years of doing that job. And then, I eventually, like my last 3 years in the Navy, I went to the kind of headquarters here in Hawaii. I did that job again, but I also did we have the system called the ODR system, Operational Deficiency Report. So basically, if we have if we need a specific technology to do the mission, if we have some sort of deficiency that doesn't allow us to be operationally effective, then you submit it. It can come from the most junior guy in a platoon, and it goes all the way up to the admiral. And, it gets kind of adjudicated and voted on from the COs to the commodores up to the admiral. And so we had a stack of these ODRs from the SEAL team that no one had done anything about. Some of them are, underwater communication or creating some sort of a beacon that, the technology doesn't exist. It can only be in this certain wavelength of light, and it can't be like, a dome. It has to be in a halo form and all this other stuff. And so I took a stack of those ODRs, and my job became like the science and technology director to go and find, we have a problem. And I went and found solutions. And what I did is I went and found, vendors who could potentially solve the problem. And once they gave me a plan, then I could go find money. And so I went and found $16 million in like 2.5 years of other people's money to help solve our operational efficiencies. And so I was just going to take that and transition that to the outside world and be a consultant.
S&T consultant.
Yeah, exactly. And so, let's say you have a technology that you maybe want to, present to the military. I can find you a military organization that may need that technology, that capability. And then in order to bring it up to prime time so that it actually supports an operational need, I have this Rolodex of people where I can go get money. Well, when I, started presenting myself as a consultant, people are like, yeah, we don't want to talk to you. We don't like consultants. Consultants, they just pretty much just steal. They take, but they don't give. And I'm like, but I'm not that guy. I'm like, whatever. I'm like, okay, well, go sell this thing. And if you sell enough of it, we'll pay you for it. I'm like, I'm not doing that either. And I don't think your thing works. Like, we can talk about it. So I also have, I'm able to sell things to the government. So I had some, created some stuff, and won some contracts to help pay the bills. And, but it was a grind, and I didn't want to do that piece of it. Yeah. I wanted to help companies like create new technologies. And so I didn't do great there. And so what eventually happened is, I've, been in the military a long time. I got some baggage. I don't call it PTSD or anything else. I got baggage. I got baggage from work. I got baggage from toxic relationships. And so I tried CBD, about a year after I got out, and CBD helped kind of turn down the noise in my head, because pretty much, my nightly routine was several glasses of vodka to turn that noise off that I can't stop, these conversations. And it helped like turn that noise down so that I could have a little bit better self-talk, a little bit better sleep. And, I didn't notice anything right in the beginning, but what I noticed over, that like month of that first bottle of CBD that I tried is like, I say water boils at 212 degrees. I was probably living at 210 degrees. So it didn't take much of a trigger to like push me over to that boiling point. And what I noticed is I went from like 210 to 205 to 200 to 195 to 190. Like I got out of the red zone and more into like an orange. I wasn't quite to yellow, but, and then, I'm 100% disabled through the VA, which means I'm 250%, and they don't even have they didn't even like register all of my stuff. Or I didn't submit all the stuff. And so I got a lot of aches and pains and whatever. And I noticed that like these sharp pains that I have, they're less. And so I stopped taking the CBD. Yeah. After about a month of taking CBD. Okay. It wasn't like, I didn't notice it in the beginning. I noticed it like at the end. And then I noticed it because things started coming back. I'm like, oh, I haven't had that pain, that issue for kind of a long time. And I kind of, and then I was like, maybe it was the CBD. Oh, so
you're saying you were taking CBD. Yeah. And then you ran out of the bottle or something.
Yep. Ran out. And I didn't think much about it. I'm like, oh, it's kind of expensive. Like I can't go down that road. And then I
Then the pains and the noise came back.
Things started coming back. Yeah. I'm like having less control of my own thoughts. I'm having some of these pains are coming back sharper than they were, they just were. So I was like, maybe it was a CBD, maybe not, maybe placebo, who knows? So I tried a different brand and I had similar results. Then I was at a business conference trying to figure out like my own, what the hell I'm doing. Yeah. And I met someone but I'm very interested in the CBD world. And I met someone there that was in the CBD industry and they were actually taking kinesiology tape, like rock tape and things like that. And they're infusing CBD into the tape. And so you get like that topical CBD infusion through the tape, through the application of the tape, and the tape is still holding things the way that it's supposed to hold it. And so I like tracked her down and I was like, hey, you're the CBD girl, right? And she was like, yeah, can you back off there, crazy? And I said, I'm interested in the CBD world. I was really hoping that maybe she would hire me. And she was like, so you want to do A to B, B to B, B to C? I'm like, I want to do CBD. And so after a little bit more, she was like, well, why don't you start your own CBD company? I'm like, I don't know how to do that. Right. She was like, you're a Navy SEAL. We'll figure it out. I was like, oh man, can I have my man card back, please? And so she, helped educate me a little bit on the industry. And I started digging into it. And I found out that the industry overall is extremely dirty. It's starting to clean up now. But the FDA has gone out and done tons of spot checks. And they found that most CBD products, more than 70%, they either didn't have CBD in them, they had high levels of THC above that legal limit of 0.3% or less. They had heavy metals, toxins, mercury, arsenic, lead, things like that in them. So, people take CBD as a medicine. I'm using air quotes here, but if you're taking something as a medicine, you don't want to be putting a bunch of poisons in your body. So what my new mission was to start a CBD company that had the highest quality CBD in the market. And we've achieved that. And then our other goal was is really to address veteran suicide. So our mission is 22-0 because, 22 veterans take their lives every single day. We've lost more veterans to suicide than we have in 20 years of sustained combat. And, my dad, I didn't realize it at the time, but I was, I was in a podcast with, 2 other SEALs, and it just sort of came out of my mouth like, yeah, my dad also killed himself. So he's a veteran, one of those 22. Wow. And I didn't even put any of that together until that one moment. So that made that mission even more important for me. So I talk about CBD as a modality. And so our mission again is to, provide, the highest quality CBD that we possibly can, but, as a modality to help prevent veteran suicide. But the other piece of it that I've kind of talked about a little bit is changing your mindset because, like I said, transitioning from the military was the hardest, military mission I've ever been on. I'm still on it. I'm still figuring it out. But at least now I have mission and purpose and I'm building teams around me. I have coaches and other people that help guide me along my path. So name of your company is N.A.K.E.D Warrior Recovery.
N.A.K.E.D Warrior. And for those who, nobody really can see this but me because I can see him on the Zoom, but he does have a shirt on that says Get Naked, which I kind of want one. Where do I get one of those so I can walk around like the beach and just see what happens?
Yeah. So I actually have a website for apparel specifically, and it's N.A.K.E.D Warrior Apparel.com. Or you can go to my website, nw-recovery.com, and there's a thing that will take you, it says apparel, and it'll take you to that other site.
But the apparel isn't infused with CBD, right?
It is not infused with CBD.
It's just, it's infused with fucking cool is what it is.
Right. Exactly. And so Get Naked is really talks about a mindset, and people ask me like, what does that mean? I'm like, this is about mental health. And so it really gets their attention. I mean, when you say get naked, people are like, what? Yeah. And so it's really about mental health, but it's also, I talked about like changing my, taking control of my own thoughts. And then, I've taken my 26 years of service and sort of, created this acronym of NAKED, and really NAKED stands for never quit, and not, never quit, like drug, don't stop trying to quit smoking or drinking or whatever bad vices you have. Never quit on yourself, never quit on trying to improve your life. If you've started something that's really hard, that's probably a good thing. Keep going. Like, don't quit on it. Like, create these small victories.
Right.
And so the N stands for never quit. The A is accept failure, because failure has been the greatest, teacher of my life. I wouldn't trade the failures that I have for $100 million, because then I wouldn't be the person that I am. Yeah. Because I only have that experience through the failures that I've, experienced. The K is kill mediocrity, because we're surrounded by mediocrity every day. How easy is it to get stuck scrolling through your phone and doing like nothing, making excuses to not do something. And so the K is the kill mediocrity. The E is expose your fears. And I don't mean, lions and tigers and bears. I mean, those deep, dark, noises, those voices that live in the back of your brain, those thoughts that you have that you don't really want to tell anyone about. Yeah. The only way that you're going to get control of those is you have to expose them. And whether that's like, maybe you have low self-esteem, maybe you take a jiu-jitsu class, and because you're going to, maybe you're kind of beat up, bullied as a kid. Well, you take those classes, you're going to learn some self-defense. You're going to learn to be more confident. You're going to be forced to fight someone every single night that you go to class. And that's going to expose those fears. And now you'll be able to control those fears, and those fears will no longer control you. But it's not like a one-trick pony. You got to continue to do that. I have one of my business coaches, and he's also a friend of mine. He says fear does not exist on paper. And so when he's driving along and, he's successful with the, in the, I don't know, nine-digit entrepreneur, with a B behind it. Yeah. And so he still has stress and anxiety and things that really like take control of him. And so what he does is, like, if he's like driving along and he's got all this noise in his head, he'll pull over to a Starbucks. He'll get a coffee. He'll sit down with a pen and a piece of paper, and not on your phone, a pencil and piece of paper. And he'll write out everything that's bugging him. And once he writes it out, like, he's like, and you read it and you're like, that's what was bothering me. Like, that's so insignificant in the world of whatever. But, he says fear does not exist on paper. And so maybe you write those things that are like, you don't want to share, and you share it with yourself actually in the world. I talk about like, fear is like a vampire. It sucks the life out of you. That's what fear does. It sucks the life out of you. It lives in that deep, dark place in the back of your mind. Vampires live in the darkness. And the way you kill the vampire is you expose it to sunlight. And the way that you kill those fears and take control of them is you expose them. So that's kind of my 2 cents on kind of exposing your fears, because once you expose them, you'll be able to control them, and they will no longer be able to control you, because we let fear control us all the time. And the D is do the work. We're surrounded by instant gratification all the time with Netflix and YouTube, and, you can order ice cream in like 30 minutes or less from Amazon. And so we get this dopamine effect of instant gratification. But when, kind of going back to like the never quit is, it's supposed to be hard. Not everything is supposed to be easy. Technology has made our life very, very comfortable. And, when we become super comfortable, then we lose the appreciation of doing hard work and that reward at the end of the day. You've heard the saying that Rome wasn't built in a day, but I guarantee it was built every single day as it became an empire. Yeah. And so that's sort of that's the do the work that we have to do. And, I say that, there's a saying in the SEAL teams that says, earn your trident every day. I didn't have that mindset when I graduated SEAL training. I was like, I graduated the hardest military training in the world. How, life's going to be good. But they, in the SEAL teams, we don't look at it like that. Yeah. I learned very, very quickly that,
much harder to keep it.
Yeah. You're expected to perform better today than you did yesterday. And that's why we say the only easy day was yesterday. And it took me a while to figure that out, but that's really doing the work. So it's never quit, accept failure, kill mediocrity, expose your fears, and do the work. And I also have a website. Mantra. And I have another website. I've got lots of websites to share with you. If you go to the website, it's the number 5sealsecrets.com, 5sealsecrets.com. Put your name and email in there. I've got a PDF. It's about 8 pages. It's got some cool photos. And it kind of breaks down each one of those to, and just to kind of share a little bit about that piece of it. And so, I use CBD. It was a modality to help turn down the noise. And then using this other kind of changing your mindset is sort of the other piece of it to kind of help us get to this 22-0. But I shared this document with a buddy of mine, and he was going through kind of a little bit of a hard time with the CEO of a company that he was working with. And so I shared the document. He printed it out, he pasted it up on his wall. And the next Monday, he went in and had a meeting with the CEO, and he went in and he started just like this. I'm afraid that I am going to not be able to perform at the level that you think I can perform. And so it totally, like, he went in and took charge saying that he's afraid. And his CEO was like, whoa, hold on, Tiger. Number one, why are you being honest? Number two, why are you saying you're afraid? Number three, like, what the hell is going on? And so, because it was supposed to be like a strategy meeting. And so he just sort of like, he's like, listen, my buddy sent me this document. He said, expose your fears. So I'm exposing my fears to you. I'm afraid that I will not be able to perform at the level that I should be able to perform because of this, this, and this. And so we need to address these things in order to, us to meet the goals of the company. And so the CEO was like, can you share that document with me? And I guess he shared it with several other people in the company. And so they're kind of changing the shift of the company. And I'm looking to go back and do some public speaking and maybe some coaching with that company to kind of like change mindset in the workforce, change mindset in the organization. So that's something else that I'm doing as well. I'm starting to.
So there's a CBD modality, as you said, a modality. Explain what modality is. So
modality, it's just like I don't know, like Webster's dictionary, but like, ibuprofen is a modality. It's a delivery mechanism. Yeah. And so it's a piece of the puzzle. It's not the whole puzzle. Like, it's just a piece to get you where you're going. Your car is kind of a modality to get to work. Exactly. Or get to whatever. CBD was a modality to help reduce stress and anxiety in my life, turn down some of the noise, decrease some of the pains that I have. And so it worked like that. But once I was able to kind of be in charge of my own thoughts, well, then I needed to figure out what I needed to think about. Like, change your mindset. Don't be a victim, be a victor. So this, it's very easy for people to get, go down this rabbit hole of like, woe is me or whatever. Like, you need to learn how to take charge of your life, take charge of those thoughts in your brain. We came from, being in the military where we're part of this great organization to what do we do now? Yeah. And so it's really about changing your mindset and taking charge of who you are and what you're going to do. So it's multifaceted, really. Your whole, there's no magic pill modality out there. There's no, nothing cures anything, CBD, people claim that it can cure all these different things. It doesn't. Actually, what CBD does, it supports your endocannabinoid system, which is a giant neuroreceptor system that's connected to every other system in your body. And if one system gets out of whack, then it can pull other things out of whack. And that's kind of like the, chronic illness and inflammation and things like that. So CBD has been shown to reduce chronic inflammation. It's been shown to help with sleep, improve quality of sleep. And it supports that endocannabinoid system. So your body makes endogenous cannabinoids. Okay. But sometimes it doesn't. That? No, I'm just kidding. I've written it a lot of times, but my spelling is terrible. No. So you make these endogenous cannabinoids, internally, but you don't make enough. It doesn't support the endocannabinoid system enough. So CBD, I call it like a super multivitamin for your endocannabinoid system. So it goes in and it helps support and brings everything back into homeostasis, brings it back into balance. And so when you have that mechanism happen internally, your body just starts to heal itself the way that it's designed to do. And that's why like people are like, oh, it cured my cancer, it cured my whatever. And CBD didn't cure any of it. It supported your body in such a way that your body was able to, get rid of the, heal itself like it's supposed to. Let's talk about CBD real quick. So CBD is what at its base level, it comes from the cannabis plant. Correct? Or, yeah. So CBD, also known as marijuana. Is it like a particular strand of marijuana or cannabis? So it does come from the cannabis plant, but it comes from the hemp plant. Hemp. So the difference between hemp and marijuana If you have the two plants sitting next to one another, you can't really tell the differess unless you're an expert. And you know, some are taller, shorter,
one makes
fatter,
really
whatever.
good brownies, and one makes really good paper. Right. No, just kidding.
And so in 2018, Congress passed the Farm Bill, which the Farm Bill made hemp legal. And hemp, I guess the definition of hemp is, you know, it maintains all the natural cannabinoids of the plant, but the molecule THC, it is bred to only have 0.3% or less in the dried weight of the plant of the molecule THC. So that made CBD legal because CBD comes from the hemp plant. And so CBD oil, there's like, it's like everywhere you look now, you see like CBD shops on every corner, like all over the place. And
shout out to Killcliff, CBD Killcliff. Oh, that's right.
So CBD oil is extracted from the leaves and flowers of the hemp plant. Okay. And so you take that oil, and it has, you know, over 120 minor cannabinoids and terpenes. So terpenes are essential oils, and they do different things inside the human body in supporting. So one of the terpenes is called pinene, like from the pine plant, and it's a powerful neuroprotectant. So that's some of the, you know, like one benefit that you get from pinene. There's other terpenes that help with focus and energy and things like that. But you know, what we do is, you know, there's still the stigma of THC out there in the world. I don't have a problem with THC, but I still maintain my top secret clearance. I still do kind of a W-2 job that requires me to have a security clearance. So I do get drug tested. I take a lot of CBD. I take a lot of my CBD, and I've never had any issues on that side of it. But the kind of CBD that we sell is a broad spectrum. So there's three main categories of CBD. You have a full spectrum, which has all the minor cannabinoids and terpenes from the hemp plant to include that small amount of THC. You have a CBD isolate where they isolate the molecule CBD and get rid of everything else. And then they put that into like an MCT oil or an olive oil or a hemp oil or something like that. And they sell it, which is the lowest quality of CBD. And then you have, because you're missing out on all the minor cannabinoids and terpenes that are associated with it. It's just that one single molecule. There's, like I said, 120-ish different other minor cannabinoids, like CBD, CBG, CBN, THC, and many, many others. And then all these essential oils that come from the hemp plant. They're kind of all mashed together. And so when you take that, you get sort of the synergistic effect inside the body. The primary product that we sell is a broad spectrum. So you still have most of those minor cannabinoids and terpenes from the hemp plant, but we remove that molecule THC just because people have a stigma about it. It's a little bit more expensive to do that. But we do it because I get people asking me all the time about drug testing and things like that. And I can't say that you're not going to pop positive on a drug test because I don't know what else you're doing in your life. What I can say is that I take a lot of my brand of CBD and I have zero issues ever. I even pay for my own testing off to the side just to I'm trying a new product, a new formulation that may have something, some other stuff. And so I take a bunch of it and I go pay and get a drug test to make sure that it's not showing up in my system as an illicit product.
So we talked about this before we started recording here, but one, I think, common thing you hear is that CBD is, some people feel CBD, it's out there. And like you said, there's various levels and qualities of it, but I had heard that without some THC, that the benefit of CBD is, I don't know, restricted, reduced or whatever. And you say that that's actually a misnomer?
That is false. That is marketing. Because
false.
That is a false statement. It is, what they're really referring to is, this was kind of early marketing in the early days. It's like a full spectrum product versus an isolate. Right. Not very many people, very few companies do a broad spectrum like we do.
Mm-hmm.
So they're saying that our full spectrum product that has trace amounts of THC is better than that CBD isolate that doesn't have any THC in it. But it also doesn't have any of the other minor cannabinoids and terpenes in it. So they're making that comparison. They're not, they're saying that you need the THC, and the people that are selling a CBD isolate say, we're THC free. Mm-hmm. They're totally true. It's two extreme sides of the spectrum, and we're in the middle, but we're more on the closer to we're closer to the full spectrum than the isolate. So we just remove that molecule of THC. You lose some other small things along the way, but you can add other, terpenes and minor cannabinoids back into the system, back into the oil.
Yeah. So what are some of the hangups that people have around, I don't know, starting to take or trying CBD?
Well, it took me more than a year to try CBD after I got out of the military, because I'm a child of Nancy Reagan's war on drugs. Just say no.
Yes, right.
So that's that. Yeah, exactly. So that's out there. There's still the stigma, even though many states have legalized it. It's still like THC is still illegal federally. And just like, it comes from the marijuana plant. Well, it actually doesn't. I mean, there are companies, part of it, especially in the early days, they were just using marijuana and then extracting the oil and then call it that CBD oil. So you got various qualities out there. We make sure that we have the highest standard really in the marketplace. And even the biggest companies that name brands that you might see, we have higher quality than they do because of our testing protocols. We test the oil when it comes out of the plant to make sure it is what it is, has what it says it has. And then we test the final product. And most companies don't test that final product, making sure that no contamination or nothing happened along the way. We want to make sure that what we say is on the bottle is actually what's in the bottle. So we test that final product, and we, have lab testing. I don't think I have any. Yeah, I've got a little here. So put a QR code on every product so that you can scan it, look at the lot number, and see exactly what's in the product that you're taking.
Interesting. One other thing. So I do know, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, the Department of Defense, active duty military are not allowed to take CBD products currently. Is there anything being done to change that?
So yeah, that is correct.
Tulsi Gabbard was doing something, right?
Tulsi Gabbard from Hawaii did push something forward that basically it was in the National Defense Strategy, something that basically was trying to, because it was the Secretary of Defense that made that policy. And basically it was from Congress. It didn't pass for whatever reason. One, Senate, House, however all those politics work. It said something to the effect of, the SecDef does not have the authority to not allow service members to use hemp-based products. It was something like that. Yeah. And so CBD is a hemp-based product. But I think, probably that was put in place because, in 2018, 2019, it became like the Wild West. And like I said earlier, like companies had like higher than the legal limit of THC of that 0.3% because they were using actual marijuana. They had, guys are popping positive on, drug screenings because they took CBD. Maybe they did. Maybe they just said they took it. I don't know, but I guess it happened enough times that they just said no.
So let me rephrase my question. Is there testing that can prove that you've taken high quality CBD oil without THC?
They would have to test you for CBD specifically. Yeah.
Right. And that's probably pretty expensive.
They're already doing they do 9 or 12 panel tests, but they're testing for illicit products, THC, opioids, meth, whatever. And so they're not testing for CBD because no one really cares unless they're like, they suspect you and they're like, oh, we're going to bust you for whatever, steroids.
Yeah. Another question on CBD. Have there been any studies that would disprove or prove any type of performance decline or cognitive decline? Because there's no study out there that says that CBD like makes you stoned or gives you like a
No, it works on a different pathway. So we'll just compare THC and CBD. So the way those two molecules work, remember I talked about the endocannabinoid system a little bit earlier, and you have these CB1 and CB2 receptors. So CB1 receptors are kind of central nervous system, brain, things like that. So what THC does when you take it, it goes in and it binds to those CB1 receptors. And when it binds to those receptors, that's what causes this euphoric state of being high. If you were to take, maybe you have a bad trip on THC, and I'm speaking anecdotally because I've never done this, but this is what the science says.
Right.
If you have a bad trip, you take a bunch of CBD, the CBD will come in and it will uncouple that THC molecule from the CB1 receptor and bring you back down off that high. So they work opposite.
Yeah.
In support of it. So CBD is more of a protectant and filling in, the gaps that you need, where THC is more, it works. I mean, it does help with pain and it does help with all this other stuff. And this is getting a little nerdy, but
I like it, man. Bring on the nerd shit.
On the way that they discovered this endocannabinoid system is back in the 90s, scientists put a radioactive isotope on a THC molecule and, gave that to a person. And then they were able to track where it was going and what it was doing, because they wanted to figure out what does this THC have to do with medical marijuana? How is it supporting the body? And that's how they found this, endocannabinoid system. And the endocannabinoid system, like I talked earlier, it's connected to every other system in your body, your central nervous system, your respiratory system, your endocrine system, your digestive system, your immune system. It's connected to everything. And so, like I said, when one thing is out of whack, that can make other things out of whack. And that's kind of the chronic disease, and taking CBD helps bring everything back into balance. And that's kind of I go from nerd to bro science.
No, I like it, man.
But just to kind of answer that question a little more, because CBD was a class 1 drug up until the end of 2018. And I think actually Mississippi State or Ole Miss, they were doing some testing on, the cannabis plant, because they had all that paperwork done through the DEA. Now there are studies coming out every day. People send me questions and I just get on PubMed and I Google kind of what the question is. And PubMed is just it's an open source, public, database of publications for medical research, and nothing goes on PubMed until it's peer reviewed several times. And then it's uploaded to the system. And so I'll get on there and I'll look up things for, everything to do with CBD, from sleep, from stress to, curing stuff or whatever. And the data really shows, I have seen a study where it shows small amounts of CBD can actually give you energy, where oftentimes people take CBD for sleep. And so I actually have an energy drink. It's a powder that has, 12.5 milligrams of CBD in it and about 75 milligrams of caffeine. And so what you actually get from that is you get more of a focused energy. I use it as a little bit of a workout, but I also use it as kind of a nootropic, air quotes. And most of the feedback that I've gotten is, I got feedback from one person that she's able to get off of her Adderall by using this CBD. She's able to have the focus that she needs during the day, but not the jitters at night. And so you don't get a crash like you do from caffeine and things like that. CBD will help kind of level out that, the spike and crash of caffeine and give you a little more sustained focus. So it can help with things like that.
Is this available at your website now?
Yep.
And you might have mentioned it before, and we'll definitely put it in the show notes, but what is that website again?
The website is nw-recovery.com. You can also type in Naked Warrior Recovery. .com, but I changed it from Naked Warrior Recovery because maybe people don't want to write naked into their search engine. I don't really know why, but I was like, wait a minute, maybe I should
my auto.
Right. I don't know. So you can write Naked Warrior Recovery,
right?
And it will go to the website.
And the products that you're talking about are all just available online, or do you have them in some stores or retail?
They're primarily online. There are some jiu-jitsu studios, some gyms that carry it. There's a CrossFit gym in North Carolina that carries it. There's some gyms in California that carry it as well. Utah, there's some places there. But yeah, for the most part, it's primarily online. And right now we're having pretty smoking deals for veterans and first responders or people of service. If they just reach out to me and tell me they're a veteran, first responder, something like that, I give them a 30% discount for life. I'm not going to give you the discount code on here because I don't want everyone to have it. I still need to pay the bills. Yeah, exactly. You got bills to pay, man. But I mean, this discount code is good for life. And, everyone, awesome. Again, my goal is to support veterans and first responders. It's to support everyone, but, I understand the financial situation of some people out there, and CBD is not a cheap product. So I want to make it as easy to get as possible.
No, that's really good of you, man. And really appreciate, doing something for the mission to reduce veteran suicide, to prevent veteran suicide is something that, a lot of people can obviously get behind. You mentioned also, so your whole mindset of, hey, get naked. And, you mentioned that, do you do speaking events, or you're looking
I do speak at events. I've had some companies bring me out to really talk about this get naked mindset. I've also got some courses that I'm building, really to focus on leadership and also to focus on life transitions. We'll call them life transitions, and really a lot of I'm breaking down really military mission planning process into more of a civilian type understanding. Because we have life transitions all the time. You get married, you get divorced, you have a child, you buy a house, you sell a house, you have a death in the family, you have a global pandemic. There are these weird, transitions out there, and people, we've got kind of a plan, but no one ever practices the plan. And I think that was something that really came from being in the SEAL teams and being in the military, is doing that rock drill, doing that dirt dive, doing that, you practice the mission before you actually go do the mission, because things are going to happen that you didn't really plan for. And oftentimes the bad stuff happens during those transitions, like transitioning from the vehicle, to patrol to the building, transitioning through the building, things happen there. Maybe nothing happened on target. We're transitioning from the building back to the vehicle. Then we get ambushed. Then, because we've made some noise and, people knew we were there. And so now we have a plan. Well, we can't use that plan, but now we're able to modify the plan because we knew what was going to happen, what could have happened. And we did the dirt dive. We did what if. And so, we're able to, change the plan, change the route to get out and avoid, being ambushed too badly.
Yeah. For our civilian listeners out there, what we're talking about generally is contingency planning, which, it's funny. In my position, people always ask me, what do military people think? What do military people think? And I have to remind people that people in the military are just like everybody else.
We're just regular folk.
Regular folk, man. I Google the same shit that everybody else does. If I need to buy a house, I find my house exactly the same way. The difference is probably 90% of people in the world have never done something really hard. Where I don't mean that they haven't done. I'm sure everybody's done difficult things, but they could stop. Whereas people in the military and athletes and things get to that point where their body, their mind is telling them to stop. But people from athletes, people from the military, and not just special operations, but all over the military,
stopping's not an option.
Yeah, stopping's not man, this sucks, but Got to keep
Never
going.
quit.
Can't stop.
Quit.
Never quit.
Keep
That's
going.
right. And also people don't really look at contingency planning as much, right? It's like, this is my plan, man. And what happens if this happens? Well, I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. And obviously that puts yourself at a very, very vulnerable state. And man, we've been going on for a while, and I could talk about this stuff with you all day. But I always like to bring up there's the military is full of a lot of boredom,
right?
a lot of fun, a lot less fun than boredom, but there's always a bit of funny PG-13 to rated R. I don't care. Like, sure. What's that story from your career where it's something embarrassing or you're like, oh man, what the hell happened there?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me think about that for a second.
Yeah. We had another SEAL on a while back who his story was they had some neoprene like UDT undershorts or something. And, everybody's just peeing themselves, but the pee had like stayed in those shorts and like rotted their flesh. And so when they went to the bathroom, it was like ripping off layers of skin. That was his. That's a primer.
I don't think I have anything like that. I mean, I have had to pee myself more than once.
You mean to tell me you went 26 years without being embarrassed?
No, not at all. I'm just trying to think, everything is a competition in the teams.
Yeah. Yep.
If you, especially like the higher you go in that sort of competition realm, like if you wash out early, it's not as big of a deal. But as you kind of like, and now it's like, okay, who's going to be the mom and who's going to be the dad? And like this, like, maybe me and like the OIC, thankfully I won that one, but I was for sure started making excuses right away. I'm like, bro, I've been on like riding a desk for the last 2 years. Like, what? They're like, oh, making excuses there. Cheap art. I'm like, okay, perform. But yeah, there are many, and you just like, I just wash them off as best I can. I try not to think about them too much because I don't like to lose.
Yeah, I hear that. And by the way, the answer is always the NCO is the father and the officer is
I had
the
to
mother.
but I was like, I do not want to be called mom for the rest of this like workup.
As a matter of fact, OICs, you might be called stepmom because most OICs are temporary help, man.
Right.
NCOs are around for a long
it's
time.
different in the SEAL teams. Like once you're in, you stay as an officer in the SEAL teams unless you decide to leave.
You get promoted up to like a 4 or 05?
07, 09. Yeah.
You can be on a platoon?
You can be. So as at 01 through 03, you can be in a platoon. 04, you become a task unit commander. So you're still tactical. And then from there, you're in staff roles, but you're still part of the team. You're like,
that's good.
You don't go to the fleet. You don't go to the regular Navy. You just do like soft stuff.
Yeah. Same with SF. Unfortunately, our officers, or fortunately, depending on which one you get, they get very little team time these days. Unfortunately, like 18 months sometimes. And then they're just a staffy dude.
Yeah. Terrible.
So hey, William, I really appreciate your time, and
this is fun.
And it's good to connect with other veterans, especially ones who have a positive mission out there. Everybody, don't forget this: never quit, accept failure, kill mediocrity, expose fears, and do the work. I really like that mantra. What I was thinking of? I don't know, maybe I'm hungry, but as you were talking about all of that, especially do the work, it's like when you do it yourself, it means so much more. I don't think I've ever had a steak at a restaurant as good as a steak I've made at home, and like when you put in the hard work, it's just so much more rewarding. And that's
the real gratification. It's not the instant gratification. It's the gratification from actually doing the work.
Yeah. And this mantra, or I guess that's what you call it, is so applicable to to so many things. And so if you're an athlete or a stay-at-home mom or a student, I think this is a mantra that is applicable. And if you're getting up and out of this podcast, except for, the fact that most of you probably want to become SEALs now, is this mantra of never quit, accept failure, kill mediocrity, expose fears, and do the work.
And that's what Get Naked is all about. Thank you.
Yeah, man. I love getting naked. I'm about to get naked as soon as I get off this call. But I appreciate your time, and hopefully we can do this again sometime, man.
Yeah, for sure. I got lots more to talk about. I'll try to come up with some funny stories next time.
There you go. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, William Branum.
Perfect.
There you go. All right, you made it. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Return to Base, brought to you by VeteranLife.com. That, of course, was William Branum. That's BRANUM of Naked Warrior Recovery. I think that was a really good discussion about CBD. I learned a lot of things about CBD that I did not know before. And to be honest, really got me interested in perhaps using CBD as a way to cope with some of the different physical pains and things that I deal with on a daily basis. So I want to thank him for joining us on this podcast, and hope that you all will consider going to his website, which is https://nw-recovery.com. That's NW. So like Naked Warrior, nakedwarriorrecovery.com. So nw-recovery.com. Sorry. Also, if you haven't liked or subscribed to the Return to Base podcast, please do so. We'd really appreciate it. And thank you once again for joining us. See you next time.